You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so if I'm talking about another religion, I want to make sure that even if I am not quite open-minded, that I believe that Jesus is the way, I'm not going to go with hate but I'm going to say, let me try and understand where you're coming from. Anyway, so yeah. So I hear you.
So I think just in my, like I'm thinking, I was invited to the Church of Scientology. They've got the castle up here in Kailami.
Okay, is it theirs now, hey?
Yeah, that's where their main church is. So
I know that there's a house out in Cyril Dean's side.
I've been to that one
house.
also. I've been to that.
Because L. Ron Hubbard is the founder of Scientology. He lived in South Africa for a time.
I've gone there and I've seen his office is still the same. They clean it, they keep it the same. So I went there with an open mind because I wanted to understand different types of religion.
Yes, totally.
From different types of spiritual understanding. So, and I speak to a number of different people so that I don't place judgment on them, but I want to hear where they come from. So anyway, so the Church of Scientology had organized over 300 churches from townships. These were all 300 different types of church leaders. The hall was packed. And I sat there and I listened to all these church leaders. And I remember getting up to speak because after I'd listened for a couple of hours and I said to them, I honestly hoped that the church
the church wasn't using them. Remember, the church was a persecuted minority for like 300 years, 200 years. They weren't in the power to come and exert and write history. When the Gospels were written, it was by people who were being persecuted for their belief in it. So it's not that the victors came and they were able to just stamp this out and give our story. They're saying, well, this happened. This has changed my life. We've got to tell people. It's a slightly different idea. It's not that they were it wasn't like they were the Roman Catholic Church. That only happened centuries later. I'm not saying there haven't been, things done wrong in the name of Jesus. But if you look at the earliest first century church, persecuted minority, hanging on to Jesus, kicked out of the synagogue, persecuted by the Romans, still telling this story because, you know what I mean? And you're asking, so as time went on, the church said, well, what are we using? Now, one of the most touted and probably the earliest gospel that isn't actually in the New Testament is the Gospel of Thomas. And people are like, we should include this. But just quickly, the last saying, it's just a saying. It wasn't that he went and did stuff. You'll find if you read these other gospels, it's not about Jesus dying for our sins. It's about you having to be clever to get saved and stuff. So it's really different from the message of the canonical gospels. But Thomas 114, Peter comes up to Jesus and says, what about Mary? And Jesus, what happens because women are not worthy of life. This is in this ancient gospel. Not in the Bible, guys, the one that's not in the Bible. Women are not worthy of life. Jesus doesn't say, I rebuke you. How can you say that? Adam and Eve were created in the image of God together. They're of equal value to God. Jesus says, no, don't worry about Mary. I'm going to let her follow and she will become a male. Because every woman that makes herself a man will be saved.
What?
And now people want to put that alongside John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him, whatever our ethnicity, religion, background, whatever, if we believe in Jesus as the risen Lord, we'll be saved. Now you want to put that thing about women having to become men in the same level? That's why most of the church, when they read this from Gospel of Thomas, they're like, nah, that doesn't sound like the Jesus we know from these other Gospels. That's why they weren't included, because as time went on, there were obviously a few pockets here and there, but the vast majority, where there wasn't a centralized one person telling you what all to do, that only came hundreds of years later. They were using the letters of Paul, the 4 canonical Gospels. You know what I mean? They were like, there's a reason they were included. So that's just a very quick summary. Like a lot of what people think happened didn't. I remember when I was about high school, I was like, how did they put the Bible together? So I wanted to, and no one, when I actually looked at the proper sources, not like, people who had an axe to grind, I was like, they're not telling me how this happened. It was a slow process. It wasn't that there was a council that came down and said, okay, we're going to burn those books, keep these ones. It naturally, organically, and obviously as a Christian, I believe God watched over it, that most people who truly love Jesus would be reading the Gospel of Matthew, not the Gospel of Thomas, because they get to saying 114 and say, Jesus would never have said that Mary had to become a man to be saved. He said that he died for us to be saved. If you hear what I'm trying to say.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
So my question earlier on was, why do the Jews then...
Yes. And you know what? we think, we're so clever because let's ask this question. It's like, no, Paul was already answering that question in Romans 9-11.
Yeah.
He says, but now if the law came and the Messiah came from the people of Israel, why have they rejected him? And he goes into a long explanation there, just very briefly, about a hardening of Israel's heart allows the Gentiles to come in. And when enough Gentiles are coming, there will be a national turning where many Jews will become Christian, or many Jews will accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior. But at the time, there are a few reasons. It was political. They were looking. This is something I thought was amazing. People are still looking for a political Messiah. Why do you think there were people that if Donald Trump had eaten a baby on the White House lawn, they would have said, he's still my president. I love this guy. Awesome. Eat the baby. And then you had other people that if Donald Trump had run into a burning building to save a baby, which they've said, nah, he's crap, I hate him, he's got nothing good about him. Because they're looking for a political Messiah that has to look a certain way.
Okay.
And I look at us, look in our thing. People are still looking to the government to solve everything. I think one of the reasons Julius Malema is so, obviously he resonates with the guys, but he's almost like a political Messiah. He's the one that can lead us into this freedom. So the Jews under oppression from the Romans at the time, they were, they'd also been kind of colonized, or at least, the Romans were the ruling government of the day. They're looking for this political Messiah to come and lead a rebellion. That's why Peter cuts off a guy's ear the day that Jesus is about to go get crucified. Even though Jesus spent 3 years saying, guys, I'm going to die for your sins. I'm dying. They're like, we're still looking for a political. Well, I'm sure he doesn't mean that literally. You know what I mean? They don't understand it. They're looking for a political Messiah based on a whole bunch of stuff that had happened between the Old and the New Testament. So when the Jews saw this guy, and also he doesn't look like someone we want to follow. He's rebuking us. He's healing people on the Sabbath. You know what I mean? So he was rejected by his own people. But it says it in the beginning of John. He came to his own, but they rejected him. But at the same time, remember, the first Jews, the first Christians were Jewish people that had followed Jesus. The New Testament is written. Maybe Luke, what looks to have been a non-Jewish person, but everything else is written by Jewish people, followers of Jesus. So I'm saying it's not like that. No one
disciples,
and even now. I mean,
were his disciples Jews?
Yeah, all of them Jews. Even though he also welcomed others. I just want to say, already back in the Old Testament, God makes a promise to Abraham. He says, through your offspring, ultimately that his descendant was Jesus. The whole world all the nations are going to be blessed. Solomon dedicates the temple and God's glory falls down. And he says, if a foreigner anywhere in the world will turn to this temple and pray or come, hear their prayer, that they will know that this is the true God. So it's always been, Rahab, when they took over with the walls of Jericho and stuff. In the old days, everyone would know these stories, but now, I don't know if you.
Yeah, no.
I mean, in the old days, I'm a friend of I know someone whose wife is about our age from America. They didn't know who John the Baptist was. They'd never heard of John the Baptist. So that's how secular. Yeah. The West is going. But even like Rahab, she repented. She joined the people of Israel. Like when the walls fell down, she had said, "Yours is the true God. I'm going to follow Him." And they said, if you leave a cord outside, everyone in your house will be saved. And she then joined. She actually became a great grandmother of King David. So I'm saying it's always been about, let's see the nations coming, but it was through the people of the Jews. And for those reasons and others, and now obviously you've actually got an organization called Jews for Jesus, people who have embraced Jesus as the Messiah. And I think if you follow all of the historical evidence, I think that you should say he has to have been. I would love to meet a devout Jewish person. I've got a few nominal Jewish people who don't really read the Bible, I've known them, but I haven't actually known devout Jewish person. I want to say, because it says in Malachi that God himself will visit this temple that was built after the exile, okay? That temple was destroyed in AD 70. So how can you still be expecting a Messiah when that temple was destroyed? Whereas the fact that Jesus did visit that temple and was God incarnate, I'm just saying, and I'm not
that he actually did visit it before it got destroyed.
Yes, he was there. Okay. I mean, because he was crucified in AD 30. That temple was destroyed in AD 70. So about 40 years before it was destroyed. So I'm just saying, and I know that there are answers, but I'm like, but now you don't either the God of the Old Testament failed or he didn't. And if he did fail, why are you still following a failed God? But if he didn't fail, then it had to have been the only candidate is Jesus. Again, I know that people will disagree, and we can disagree and still love each other. But
no, absolutely.
But those are the reasons.
Absolutely. So I think we've been chatting for more than
I
an
see
hour, 3
your eyes
minutes
are getting
or
a
so.
bit heavy.
No. I'm finding it interesting
We'll do it
because,
again.
but I think I wanted to add these two things.
Yeah.
One was as you talk about Jesus, I was actually giving my kids an example yesterday, and I said to my daughter, she's 19 years old, so I said, okay, so we're busy talking about how when you actually go up, you become exposed, you become popular, you become successful, you'll be criticized, you'll be crucified, And then I said, okay, think about this. If a guy called, I said, do you know JC? He's like, who's JC, Dad? I'm like, Jesus Christ. It's it's like, him on a first time basis.
Yeah.
First name basis. I'm like, look, think about it. He's the story is, I put it that way. So I say, he comes, he's born into this community, the Jewish community. He comes, he rebukes them, he tells them, listen,
the leaders of it,
the leaders of the church at the time, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. Why are you trading in the church? He beats them, he saves people, he spits on sand, he puts the sand on people's eyes, he makes them see, he heals them. And then the same guy, he goes, he gets crucified. But before he gets crucified, he gets beaten so badly. He gets embarrassed. They make him carry a cross, and they whip him. They spit on him. They say all the derogatory things. And I said, look, what makes you think that it cannot happen to us?
Yeah, absolutely.
If it could happen to a son of God, like how can we not face at some point in our lives ridicule?
In the church, there's this message that says, if you come to Jesus, everything is sorted out. And it's like, no, actually, Jesus promised that there would be suffering.
Yeah.
But ultimately, there will be a vindication, but only like at the end. It's not that I become a Christian, no, I'm always going to have enough money, always going to.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You'll be perfect. And
it's
like,
good that you use that example.
So the last thing is, the very same Jesus Christ is about to be born in Christmas, the 25th, according to what we've been told.
We know it wasn't on that day.
Okay.
I'll discuss it another time.
No, quickly. That's why I wanted to bring it in. Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people are like, it's a pagan festival that the church appropriated.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence. Like if you go back to the actual documents, ancient documents, and again, it wasn't that I wrote this, but I read it again. I'll say some things from, again, an atheist who hates people getting history wrong. There's no evidence that they celebrated anything on the 25th of December. Like you would imagine that the church historian at some point would say, we decided on this day for this reason. Okay, that was kind of how it worked out. Now, one of the suggestions that is more plausible, and it's the same for Easter, by the way, guys. Like there's no paganism in it. If you go back to the actual pagan documents, show me a pagan document that says that this is what we were doing on the 25th of December. You won't find it. You only find late historians like this. A lot of this comes from this one guy who wrote a book in the 1850s. That was like, this is all pagan. But his history is like rubbish. Okay. So one of the traditions that had grown up in Judaism, and obviously the first Christians were Jews, was that a prophet would die on the same day that he was born. Do you understand? Like the belief would be that you were born, like it would kind of be like on the same day, or
born and die.
Yeah, more or less. So see, I'm probably getting a bit wrong, but let me just put it this way. Yeah. So what they worked out was Mary, Jesus died in. Jesus died like at Easter time. So when we say that was about March, April in the year, okay?
Yeah.
That's when the Passover would take place, and that's when he died.
Okay.
So if you count back, that means that he had to have been born in December on December the 20th. Like you understand, like he had to be born in December for him to have died in. I'm not explaining it very well, but that's one of the reasons that the church kind of chose that time of year to celebrate it.
Was it the church that chose the date?
The biggest, actually, in the early times that the people were debating about stuff, it was, when do we celebrate Easter? For hundreds of years, they didn't really talk about Christmas. And it was a debate at the church councils in 8325. And the Christmas debates came later, okay? But there's no pagan. Again, what I'll do is I'll send you the links just of some guys. They then say that they don't believe that you can reconcile the things in the gospel either. I think that you can quite easily, but at least they'll show you the facts about where we get the Christmas idea from and everything. Then the other thing was what was I going to say? Is that, did you know that the Orthodox Church celebrates Christmas on the 6th of January? So we have about 150 million Christians celebrate Christmas on the 6th of January because of the slight discrepancy that they have in trying to work out the date. So it wasn't because they said, look, we're going to do this because of it's a pagan holiday, let's use it. It was because of the dating that they used with the ideas that they had about when a prophet should die based on when they were conceived and born and all of those things.
Yeah.
So I haven't explained it very well. I'll see if I can share some links that explain it a bit better.
Okay, go.
But honestly, we know, I mean, I've known since I was like 9 or younger that Jesus wasn't actually born on Christmas Day. But this is the day that we come together and we remember the incarnation. God eternal becoming a baby. Being laid in a manger, which was a feeding trough. I always thought like a manger was a kind of crib or something, but it's like putting him in a dog bowl. And so it's the God of glory laid in such a humble thing. Anyway, it's amazing. But I will send details where you can look at that, and please read. If anyone has any of those questions, please don't take my word for it. Let me give you some guy who's really studied and goes into the experts in it and shows the original sources. Nothing about a festival celebrated by the Romans or whatever on the 25th of December. It wasn't.
But why does the church, like in South Africa, like I think about all the black churches, everyone now is like prepared. Okay, maybe not everyone, but the church in black areas will be preparing for Christmas on the 25th.
Yes,
and then and then at the same time, it will be that story of Jesus Christ.
Yes,
and then when you go to their houses, they've got a Father Christmas and they've got a tree.
Yeah.
Is Father Christmas a pagan worship type?
No, it wasn't. What happened was there was a historical figure called Saint Nicholas.
Okay.
And he lived at about the time of the Council of Nicaea, so about 350. He was alive at 325. And he used to give children gifts at about Christmas time. He used to put like maybe some coins in their shoes or get them gifts. Oh. And slowly but surely, his story got embellished to where he's now this Father Christmas kind of a figure. Oh. But it went back to someone who loved Jesus and wanted to express that love for others by giving them, like the very poor kids and stuff, gifts at around this time of the year. Okay. So we have a Christmas tree up. Again, not a pagan tradition. It's not that we're holding up our Christmas tree and then bowing down and praying to it. That would be pagan. That would be evil. But that's not what happened.
Okay. You're doing it because?
We're doing it because it's tradition. It's just it's a nice time for the kids,
to give
and we use it. Like a lot of the decorations, for example, that they used to hang apples on it because again it was about Jesus bringing life. And all of that. They used to hang bread. Like you used to actually make bread. That's become our tinsel, which all goes back to church traditions. Just to remembering the incarnation, Jesus becoming the bread of life. We have it on our tree to remember that.
Yeah,
you understand. And now it's going into something a lot more commercial. But I use it obviously with my kids at the time. So let's not forget that this is when Jesus, God of everything, left the glory of heaven to come and be born in a stable, laid in a manger. Yeah. For me, he didn't have to do that. He didn't come when we have Wi-Fi and flushing toilets and, tap water on tap. Yeah. He came when he had to walk around, like you said, in the sun and the dusty. What a humble God that he would do that. And yet he's the God of the universe, still saying that he wants me to live with him. If that makes sense.
But this time around, when he comes, is he going to come on a cloud?
Yes. From what we can tell, and look, there is debate.
Is he near coming?
He will. Why do I know that he's coming? This is such a great way to end it. Okay. So you know how we have this hope, like when you're playing Monopoly or you buy a lotto ticket.
Yeah.
And I'm not too proud to say that I've done that sometimes.
Okay.
Ever been in the position where if you don't win the lotto, you can't pay rent? Yeah, we've had that. Yeah, but God has seen us through.
Yeah.
But you hope. You throw the dice, you hope. There's no assurance that you're going to get it. Okay? The Christian hope in the return of Christ is not that kind of hope.
Okay.
Because Jesus rose from the dead, and I've given you just some of the historical reasons I say we can believe it. The same way we know that Nelson Mandela was released in 1992 at a particular place in a particular point all these things. We know that Jesus rose from the dead. You understand? In history, in time. And because he rose from the dead, I know that his promise to return is true. And even if I don't know when it's going to happen, it might not happen while I'm alive, it might happen in 1,000,000 years' time. I know that he will one day return to take all of his children to be with him forever. if that makes sense. And he's not coming back to be born again. He's coming back as the risen Lord.
Okay.
And again, the thing is, obviously, my appeal is, please respond to him now, because when we see him, it's going to be too late. Then it's time for judgment.
Is he going to come on a cloud, and then will all nations bow before him?
I believe that, yeah. It doesn't look. I don't think that bowing means that everyone is going to become Christians when they see him.
Okay.
But everyone's going to accept, oh my gosh, that is God incarnate. We have nothing to say.
He also warned us against false prophets.
Yes. Come on, man. We're in South Africa. We talk about the guys eating grass, spraying doom, making you drink petrol. Does that not sound like false prophets? One of the problems is, and this is for everyone. We are living in everyone. You can get a Bible on your phone for free. Everyone can have access to a Bible. I think we have more than half of our country lives below the poverty line, if I'm not mistaken. But over 90% of us have got access to cell phones and smartphones. We could all have a Bible, but we're not reading our Bibles. And that's when you get, you get duped by people who say, drink this petrol, it will bless you. I'm just saying, guys, please stick to the Bible, stick to the true Jesus.
I sent you a post where a guy was saying that if I want to go see God, I can go pay him $10,000.
I think it was $20,000 to see God.
Yeah.
I'm like, you will see Jesus. Look, in your heart, in your spirit, I think you will know him. And then one day we are promised that we will see Jesus in the eternal state. John sees in Revelation, which again is a controversial book, and we don't have anything like Revelation. It's apocalyptic literature. We don't have, you have romance, you have crime, you have drama, historical fiction, non-fiction history. We don't have, a genre like Revelation anymore. But John sees the New Jerusalem coming out of heaven as a perfect cube. He says it's as long as it is wide and as high as it is long. So it's a perfect cube. The only other place in the Bible where you have a perfect cube is the Holy of Holies. So when they set up the tabernacle, there was where they kept where God's presence was supposed to reside. It was there in the Holy of Holies, and then in the temple, and God's presence fell down the Holy of Holies. So it seems as if we're going to live in the very Holy of Holies, in the presence of God himself forever. And it says in Revelation, I was saying this on Sunday, it says in Revelation that we will behold him face to face. But when Isaiah had a vision of God, just the hem of his robe, the hem of our pants. He just saw that. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. And God said, look, I've cleaned you. You can go for us. But it said that he saw these angelic beings with 6 wings. With 2 they covered their feet, which is a sign of modesty. Like Moses would take his shoes off, but the angels cover their feet. They fly with 2. And with 2 wings, they cover their faces. Because not even angels can gaze upon God. He's so holy, perfect, and pure. And yet, because of the work of Christ on the cross, when we go to be with him in heaven, however that works out, we will be with him one day in heaven, seeing him face to face, something that not even angels can do. But because of his mercy for me, I'm terrible. In our heart of hearts, we know that we are capable of, we've done horrible things. We still have horrible thoughts and feelings. And yet, despite all of that, God has forgiven me and says, you can gaze upon me one day. And that's an invitation open to everyone. I'm thinking whether you're Muslim or Hindu or whoever, the invitation is there if you respond to Jesus. Atheist, whatever, you know what I mean? The invitation is there. Whatever your skin color, whatever your creed, it's
Sure. Brother, you and I can chat for another 2 hours. I've got so many questions running through my head, but I am thinking that we need to do another session again. And I think
if enough people watch and want me back, but if no one watches, then you'll know to solve this. We'll go for a cup of coffee.
You know what? The thing is, I always think that, for me, it's never really about the number of people that watch. It's just really about whoever watches finds the content, and it might be able to solve one person's life.
And I think that we have good answers. As a Christian, it's like there are all these questions, and they're good questions, but they're good answers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not saying I can answer every question, and there are mysteries. But what I do know, the resurrection, who Jesus was, what he did for me on the cross, if I know that and I can see that there are good reasons to believe that, while I have other questions, I can have peace about that while I still try and find the answers, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you're right. There's stuff in the Bible that people still debate about, but no one debates about the main thing. So you're right. So we must.
And I think also what happens is, I once was invited to the Church of Scientology.
Okay. Yeah.
And and I was very inquisitive, because for me, different types of religions have always fascinated me. And I go with an open mind to say, I want to hear what these guys have to say.
I guess my mind isn't quite as open, but I mean, for me, I've read the Bhagavad Gita, I've read the Quran, I've read introductions to other, because I've seen how badly people represent Christianity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, that's really not what the Bible teaches, and that's not what 95% of Christians have believed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so if I'm talking about another religion, I want to make sure that even if I am not quite open-minded, that I believe that Jesus is the way, I'm not going to go with hate but I'm going to say, let me try and understand where you're coming from. Anyway, so yeah. So I hear you.
So I think just in my, I'm thinking, I was invited to the Church of Scientology. They've got the castle up here in Kailami.
Okay, is it theirs now? Hey?
Yeah, that's where their main church is. So
I know that there's a house out in Cyril Dean's side.
I've been to that one also.
I've been to that. Because L. Ron Hubbard is the founder of Scientology. He lived in South Africa for a time.
I've gone there and I've seen his office is still the same. They clean it, they keep it the same. So I went there with an open mind because I wanted to understand different types of religion.
Yes, totally.
From different types of spiritual understanding. So, and I speak to a number of different people so that I don't place judgment on them, but I want to hear where they come from. So anyway, so the Church of Scientology had organized over 300 churches from townships. These were all 300 different types of church leaders. The hall was packed. And I sat there and I listened to all these church leaders. And I remember getting up to speak, because after I'd listened for a couple of hours, and I said to them, I honestly hoped that the church was the last line of defense in our society. But having sat and listened to these pastors, I think that for our country as South Africa, our last line of defense is down. Because the church itself across, and these I'm talking churches in townships, in various cities, in areas, these pastors were coming to speak about the problems they face in their communities. They were saying things like, young people are not coming to church. They are not attracting young people in their numbers. And these churches are built in areas where it's poverty-stricken. So it's not changing or making impact in those communities. Poverty, unemployment, and, crime, alcohol abuse, drug abuse. The churches are rooted in these areas. And these pastors actually don't have solutions to these societal problems. And they were coming to the Church of Scientology to say, teach us how to understand how to deal with people. Like, for instance,
that breaks my heart.
Like if a pastor sees a person who's a nyaupe addict, they'll say to them, let me pray for you, my son.
And that's good to pray. But
it's good to pray, but then what more do they do? Like this lady pastor says, in my church, my male pastors do not trust me or believe me because I'm female. Or my son is an addict or an alcoholic, and I don't know how to help my son. I've been praying for my son. So they've got real problems in their communities, and they don't know how to help them. So anyway, long story short, the Church of Scientology had a program to try and teach people, these pastors. Whether we agree with their methods or not, it's a different story.
And there's this common grace in that you can have non-Christian organizations doing good in the world. It's a common grace. And again, what we go back to, I just mentioned about the image of God. We're capable of this. And look, not rah-rah. I know our church has actually got programs on where it's a 12-week course that has actually been run by a former drug addict we do quite a lot of work into the Zandspruit area because that's where our church is at. I mean, that's our community on the door that we're trying to help there. And I mean, they're running programs for career build, trying to help young guys figure out what you want to do and how then do you do it. If you want to become a nurse, what do you need to do? How do you, what are the steps you take to get there? You know what I'm saying? And I can maybe at some point share some of those things that are some of the initiatives, And then one of the new ones that's been introduced this year that I know the guy heading it up is very excited about was a thing about how do you counsel like, yes, you pray and you point them towards Jesus, but how do we then walk? What are the practical things you put in place to walk people through from a place of addiction to freedom? And he used to run a drug rehab. And I mean, even in like generally, like, you know, the relapse rate is very high. Theirs was better, but it was still high. And I'm just saying, I hear you. Just during lockdown, our church, actually, we're very much about, it says in James, what good does it say if a brother comes in and he's cold and hungry and you pray for him, say, hey, be warmed and be filled, and then go, but don't do anything. It says the same way, faith without works is dead.
Absolutely.
It's like, only faith saves me. I can't give enough money to a good cause. I can't go and do enough to get saved and go to heaven. But the only thing that saves me is the work of Christ on the cross, and he paid for my sins. And I put my faith in him. I'm saved. I'm going to heaven. But now that I'm going to heaven, I want to please him. I want to go to church, read my Bible, but I also want to help and be a part of that. And I think, I'm not saying I am at a good church. It's not perfect. It's run by people. It can't be perfect.
Yeah.
But it's by good men who leading the church that love Jesus.
Good intentions.
And love Jesus.
Yeah.
And from that, I mean, we've actually during lockdown, we were able to feed like 10,000 households.
Absolutely.
You know, with necessities. I'm just saying, thank God for that. You know what I mean? And
I mean, I think that's what I mean, I've bumped my heads with the church.
Yeah.
And I've bumped my heads with God. And I've always felt that I've got a relationship with God as if he's my father.
Yeah.
And I would speak to him in that sense. I'd say, Dad, Father, listen, I'm not happy, dude.
Yeah.
And these are my reasons. And I think, sometimes sometimes I'll listen and maybe I'll hear what he says. Sometimes I don't understand if it's him saying it, but I'll get a sense of.
I would encourage the clearest way to hear from God is, first of all, to be reading your Bible. Because the more you read your Bible, the more you think along God. You see that he hates sin, he hates evil. You see that he loves us and he's still willing to die and for us. I'm just saying, and then from that place, when you do pray, your guidance is rooted. I mean, obviously, like if I'm praying, and I believe that God says I must go kill my pastor, I'm like, nah, I can't see, like looking at Jesus, looking at who he was, that must be from, you know what I mean? But as you pray, and then, he does lead us. But that's good, man. I agree. And one of the things that the Western church has done is that it's kind of trying to make God 3 hours on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Whereas for African traditional religions, it's everything permeates with spirituality. And that's very much more like the Old Testament, like, the Jewish nation sees that. But Western, as much as it's been influenced by Christianity, it's kind of put him into a box. You only talk about Jesus, you only talk to him like on a Sunday, as opposed to every day, every moment, everything.
Yeah.
This is, for God and for his glory and like everything, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But yeah.
No, man, it's been very informative. I've enjoyed my conversations with you, bro. I've learned a lot, and I think I appreciate you being open, because not a lot of people are open about their spirituality.
Yeah.
And also
another life from the West.
Yeah, and also it's not a lot of people are open to. Because I've tried it. I've said to people, I want to have you on my podcast.
Yeah.
And allow me to ask you questions, and do not feel like I'm attacking you. Do not feel like I don't believe in your faith. And it's not about that.
But even if I don't believe in your faith, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
I want to, like I said, I have those questions for like a devout Jewish person. I know I can Google, but I've read a little bit. I'm just saying, but it's nice to be able to at least let's discuss it. I know I tend to end up just. I always want to kind of do like a thing, but I end up just but yeah.
No, but I think
we must learn. I mean, like, let me understand where you're coming from. Even if I disagree with you, I want to see where you're coming from.
Yeah. No, definitely, man. It's been amazing. Listen, I've enjoyed my moments with Liam today. I've learned a lot, and I've enjoyed our discussions. I did want to speak to him about fatherhood.
Next time.
And I wanted to speak to him about his wife. I wanted to speak to him about being a married man and all of that stuff. But I mean, our conversations just got onto another level, and
maybe
it just started moving.
There next time.
No, I think not. We'll start with that. Because I think the reason why I wanted to bring that in is also because, I mean, I know we'll talk about it next time. It's because, there's the structure of a family unit is being destroyed today. We see it every day. Men are being told to become soft or to become whatever that, a man is not a man. I mean, there's all these perceptions that you shouldn't be a heterosexual. You should be all of that stuff. And I mean, I'm not in any way trying to step on anybody's belief on their sexual orientation. There are people in
that situation. That's where they're at.
But I do feel that a family structure, and I think I want to, because I'm a family man, and I stand and firm on the family unit. That a man and a wife must stay together, have children. Kids must grow up in a family environment, and values of family. I believe in that. So I mean, other people will believe other stuff, but I want to speak about that and
the reasons for it,
and the reasons for that. And then of course I've spoken to a gay man on the show before. I've spoken to him about what he believes in terms of that, and there was no error of judgment on me. On what they believe, but I wanted to speak to you about the family unit, and also you've married a woman who's not a white woman.
She's Taiwanese.
I wanted to speak about interracial relationships as well, and where and how your kids see themselves.
It's a short question because my wife was she was 5 when she came here, so she grew up, pretty much in South Africa.
Okay.
So I'm just saying there hasn't been, but we will have more of a concept. But I'm going to say, please don't get your hopes up. It's not like it's
no.
Because I know yourself, you're married to a colored woman, which would have maybe been a bit more. Because I'm just trying to say, Ting's culture has been. She grew up like with white kids and black kids. It's more like, so she's more South African.
But I mean, I think. When you probably walk together, people have perceptions.
Yeah, there are still, we still see people spotting it. And sometimes, like, it's obviously my wife is, I mean, I always see that my wife is Taiwanese. It's like part of who she is. Yeah. But that's not all that I see. That's not the first thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, about my kids. Here's a quick one. Here's a quick one. My kids, when they walk with me, they look white.
Okay.
And I think when they're with her, they look Taiwanese. So it has. We haven't had this conversation. I'm going to start seeing if it starts coming up. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And how they describe mom and dad.
Yeah.
Because sometimes my kids, I let them know. I tell them, I'm like, your father is black.
Yes.
He's a Tswana black man. And your mother is not a black person. Your mother is colored. And then they're like, okay, but what is our culture? Then I'm like, okay, cool. Now, our family culture is this, but my culture as a black Tswana man is that, and her culture as a colored person is
got
this.
These things,
all right? But then we decided, okay, we're going to dispel or leave whatever our cultural backgrounds that we grew up with, and then we decided this is how we're going to form.
Interesting. No, that's interesting. Bringing some stuff in still, or
so you bring whatever you bring in, and then there are certain stuff that you leave behind.
For us, as I said, as a white English South African, you don't have a culture. Your culture is American and British, a bit of British, because like we knew about Mr. Bean. Okay, because I don't even know who Mr. Bean is. But I remember, like, it was such a big deal in America when they had that first movie, and it was quite an international hit, the Mr. Bean movie.
Bean,
But we'd known about it in South Africa because of the British influence.
For years.
Like for years. You understand.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, so there's not really, I think my cultural itch has really been scratched because I became quite a devout Christian from a young age. I've kind of found my culture in that. And I do believe that like all culture has to bow to the truth of Jesus. But that doesn't mean that a Zulu man stops being a Zulu man just when he becomes a Christian. But there might be certain things that a Zulu man can't do if he acknowledges that Jesus is Lord of all. Same with like in what is white American culture? Very secular, money driven, about all this. That can't be how I am as a Christian. I've got to put that aside and say, look, Jesus is. Anyway, you know what I mean? But I know for us, the melting of cultures has been a little bit less, it hasn't been as intense, we found, No, and my kids still, I don't know if I must teach them, but they still will call black guys brown. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to know, guys, rather say, it is black, they are black, but they're still saying brown. Like, the brown guy.
Yeah.
I was like, he's black, but that's so cute. I don't want to say, would that offend you if a guy said, hey, why are you a brown guy? Or would you?
No.
I guess when they're 14, it's like, yo, come, dude. No. But I think when they're young.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think I've been called many things. So it really hasn't.
Being a brown guy is like one of the better things
I've been called Liburu as a kid.
Yeah, you were saying.
And then I was called, some black guys call me Lingamla. Or they call a so-called a black person that has a car that looks like they have established. they'll call you a white person.
Yeah.
Ngamla is a white person.
It's almost like coconut, eh? Is it
Yeah.
a similar idea?
Yeah, but so there are all these stereotypes people like to throw. So for me, it doesn't really hold much water. I don't know. I've become strong over the years.
Yeah. I mean, maybe 10 years ago it would have been a different story.
10 years ago, I'd be like, don't call me a white person, or don't call me this, don't call me that. But listen, bro, I think my conversations with you was probably the longest I've had.
Oh, sorry,
because, man. No. And because I think we've touched on so many aspects that I really wanted to touch on.
No, I'm glad.
We've covered the issues of race and race relations, and I think which was where South Africa is still grappling with, and the world is grappling on race matters.
Yeah.
And I think we've also touched on a lot of things around just where we come from as a country, a lot of our history, our political understanding, where we are as a country, and of course, religion, which forms a big part of it, and Christianity in particular, because we are headed towards Christmas. And I think that's why I wanted to have this conversation in a month of, but I think it's perfect timing because we're a few days before Christmas.
12 days.
And I really
my kids are counting down the days. They're still that age. They're like, Dad, 12 days.
They're like, come on now. So, I really appreciate that you were able to open up about these things, and not a lot of people are open up to discuss the issues of race as comfortably as you did.
Okay.
And also just the issues of religion and Christianity in particular. I really appreciate you for opening up.
No, thank you for having me on, man. I appreciate that as well.
Man, thank you so much.
And let me share those links so you can actually get some of the details and some of the dating and stuff.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I think when you share them, what I'll do is that if you look on the links below on our YouTube as well as on TikTok, on Facebook, I'll be able to share those links so that if you do want more extra stuff to read and understand, and we're not trying to impose anything on you. It's just for you to open your mind and to be able to say,
for me, it's also about the facts. If I may say, it's probably going to be it's an atheist historian who, I used to believe that the Christmas had been assimilated. And I didn't really have a problem with that because every day is God's day, you know what I mean? And I didn't, and like having on the 25th is a bit like, remember like when we used to have the parties, like my birthday's on the Tuesday, but we only have the party on the Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
I've always thought it's like that kind of a thing. Like the 25th is when we do remember it.
Yeah.
But I'll send the links. And again, I don't agree with everything this guy says, but there's a lot of information.
He's an atheist.
Yeah, he's an atheist. Okay. Tim O'Neill.
So interesting that you want to share an atheist as a Christian.
Because he gives the right facts about where where Christmas came from.
Okay.
I'll do the same for Easter.
Okay.
But I'm just saying again.
Does he give the same about Easter as well?
Yeah, he also goes
as an atheist.
Yeah. Because
it's interesting how people
he's
say
an atheist, but he's intrigued by ancient history. He's intrigued by the impact that the church has. Where's it come from? And he hates, like for him, a lot of atheists, like he says, they try and get their science right, they try and get all this right, but then they don't care about getting the history right.
Okay.
And he says, if you're an atheist, you're supposed to be a critical thinker. I personally think that to be an atheist, you have to look away from a lot of evidence, but you know what I mean.
But look at history as well.
But the idea is that Christians are the guys who just close eyes and we don't know anything.
Yeah.
But he's saying, but atheists are not fact checking and checking up. Like, where does it come from? So I'll share some of that, even though. And then he says that the Bible is irreconcilable, and you can't get. And I'm like, no, I think now you've gone too far. You've gone beyond. But if he's looking at where we get Christmas from, his suggestions. The facts are not there for people to say that the church just co-opted a particular date and made that the festival of Christmas. That just didn't happen. But I'm going to have to say goodbye now. I'm going to be quiet because I know that like otherwise we're going to do this for like another half an hour trying to say goodbye.
No, I know. But it's all good because it's a podcast. So with a podcast, there are no rules. So, but it's been a great conversation with you. So. Yeah, man. Thank you so much once again, man. All right. So we are signing off for the last time. And of course, we'll be back and I'll be building up towards the ANC National Conference. That's where I'll be from Thursday up until the 20th. So it's going to be an interesting one. So do look out on the Free Ride podcast as we break it down, what happens politically. We'll tune in. Yeah. So thank you very much, man. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Cheers. Oh.